Israeli security forces on Wednesday evacuated and demolished a structure in an illegal West Bank outpost. Dozens of young people tried to prevent the court-ordered demolition. A March 2018 demolition deadline is approaching for the remaining 15 buildings in the Netiv Ha'avot outpost near the settlement of Elazar, south of Jerusalem. No violence has been reported between the settlers, who were mostly in their teens, and the roughly 100 soldiers and border police on site. The evacuation of the structure, a carpentry workshop, was relatively quietly, with security forces frog marching the protesters out of the area one by one. Protesters had barricaded themselves inside the carpentry workshop overnight. By morning, hundreds of people were there. Border police and residents of Netiv Ha'avot and their supporters gather outside of the carpentry workshop, November 29, 2017. According to social media, members of extreme right-wing circles who would normally have participated in such events were boycotting the Netiv Ha'avot protest because it is too establishment and does not enable violence. In contrast, the most extreme, violence-prone members of the so-called Hilltop Youth were present at the evacuation of the illegal outpost of Amona, where some of them attacked security forces. We've got more newsletters we think you'll find interesting. Click here. Please try again later. In September 2016, the High Court ordered the demolition of all 17 structures in the Netiv Ha'avot, which were all built wholly or partially on Palestinian-owned land. One of the structures, a monument to Israel Defense Forces soldiers killed in Lebanon, was already razed and has been rebuilt nearby. Residents of the outpost had asked the High Court to waive the demolition orders entirely for 6 buildings that were built partially on state land and partially on land owned by Palestinians. The court refused, saying it deemed them illegal construction. Border police gather at Netiv Ha'avot ahead of the evacuation and demolition of the carpentry workshop there, November 29, 2017. In issuing the order, however, then Supreme Court President Justice Miriam Nair left open the possibility that temporary construction permits could be issued that would spare the portions of the 6 structures that are on state land. On Tuesday it was reported that Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit is considering only partial demolition in the cases of the 6 homes, aside from the carpentry shop, 15 residential homes, not prefab ones, but houses built of stone, are also slated for demolition. Page 2. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah would be a target for assassination in any war between Israel and Hezbollah, the Israeli military's chief spokesman said on Monday. To really understand the Middle East, subscribe to Haaretz. Ronen Maneli's also said that the IDF is conducting psychological and media warfare against Hezbollah. Maneli's made the remarks during a panel discussion at a conference for journalists in Eilat, in response to a question from another panelist about how the army handled media warfare against its enemies and how it tried to influence the enemy via both main media and social media. One of the things we talk about is the transition from traditional media consumption to social media, Maneli's replied. We are also active in this theater, and it is an operational theater in every respect. Just in the past few weeks, we've taken a great many actions that caused consternation on the other side. We've got more newsletters we think you'll find interesting. Click here. Please try again later. There won't be a clear victory picture in the text war, though it's clear that Nasrallah is a target, he added. Though Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot has said the same thing in media interviews in the past, Maneli's remarks could be seen as a provocation to Hezbollah in light of Israel's current tensions with Syria and Lebanon. Page 3. When U.S. President Donald Trump revealed Israeli intelligence to senior Russian officials in March, he disclosed details of a covert Israeli mission to penetrate an Islamic State cell deep in Syria, claimed Vanity Fair's Howard Bloom on Wednesday. To really understand the Middle East, subscribe to Haaretz. Israel's counterterrorism unit, working along with members of the Mossad, obtained information that a Syrian Islamic State cell had developed bombs that could be placed in laptops and then go through airport security undetected. Trump allegedly gave this information to the Russian officials. Read more. Putin declares victory in Syria despite Trump increasing U.S. troops there. Analysis. Putin must satisfy Assad's Mideast neighbors if he wants his Syria peace plan to work. Israel's deputy foreign minister slams U.S. jury they never send their children to fight for their country. According to the report, this discovery prompted the Trump administration as well as the British authorities to ban laptops or other electronics on airplanes until airports could comply with more strict security guidelines. We've got more newsletters we think you'll find interesting. Click here. Please try again later. Trump reportedly passed the intelligence to the Russians without first notifying and discussing the decision with Israeli principals. According to Vanity Fair, this violation of U.S.-Israeli trust implicated the larger Middle East, as Israel assumed Russia would pass this intelligence information to their allies, the Iranians. Greater than how the fear of Israeli nukes helped seal the Egypt peace deal in January, it was reported that Israeli intelligence officials were concerned that the exposure of classified information to their American counterparts in the Trump administration could lead to it being leaked to Russia and onward to Iran. The intelligence concerns, which had been discussed in closed forums, were based on suspicions of ties between Trump, or his associates, and the government of Vladimir Putin in Moscow. According to the January report, American officials under President Barack Obama implied that Israel should be careful when transferring intelligence information to the White House and the National Security Council following Trump's inauguration on January 20. While Trump's disclosure of intelligence was non-conventional, the President of the United States has the legal right to disclose intelligence at his discretion, and Trump's actions were in no way illegal. The source of the intelligence has been suspect to doubt, however, as an Al Jazeera report claimed a Jordanian and not Israeli agent was the source of the intelligence information leaked by Trump to the Russians. The report, which cites a number of Jordanian sources, contradicts claims that it was an Israeli spy within ISIS who had originally gained the information in question. When it comes to ISIL, unlike Jordan, Israel relies on its electronic surveillance collection and its intelligence sharing arrangement with its Arab partners, one source told Al Jazeera. Page 4. A year ago, on the morning of Election Day, the Republican candidate Donald Trump tweeted to his followers that it would be an amazing day, it will be called Brexit+++. Trump was suggesting that just as 5 months earlier, voters in Britain had surprised the political establishment, the elites and the media, by voting in the referendum to leave the European Union, the same was about to happen in the United States presidential election. This week, Trump's Twitter account mocked the British elite once more. Yet again, he proved that he would rather keep the faith with his racist fanbase than safeguard America's oldest international alliances. It's not clear what damaged the special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. The fact that Trump chose on Wednesday to retweet from his account anti-Muslim videos originally tweeted by the deputy leader of Britain's tiny racist party, Britain First, or that when their source was pointed out to him, he refused to undo the retweets. What was clear is that the way he chose to respond to Prime Minister Theresa May's rather guarded criticism of his choice of retweets proved that he has no special relationship with Britain. It should have been clear to May long ago. Trump has some obsessions with Britain, with Brexit and with anything to do with Muslims and terror attacks. He regularly tweets on the subject, especially in the bizarre one-sided vendetta he has opened up with London's Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan. Trump is also obsessed with making a state visit to Britain, with all the fancy trappings of a state dinner at Buckingham Palace and a drive down the mall with Queen Elizabeth in the royal carriage. Until now, Downing Street was prepared to swallow all of Trump's tweets and demands in silence. Talks went on for months about the state visit, until Trump, disappointed to hear that London's police would not prevent mass protests against him, decided to postpone the trip. Britain is scheduled to leave the EU in a year and a half and is looking across the Atlantic for an enhanced trade relationship with the United States, which will help its economy prosper on the day after Brexit. In the first months of Trump's presidency, May did everything to build a personal, special relationship with him. She rushed to meet him in the White House and even allowed him to grasp her hand as they walked through the corridor, providing a very unflattering photograph for the press back home. At first, the British deluded themselves that they had some influence over the new administration, and that due to May's urging, Trump had toned down his criticism of NATO. But in recent months, there have been too many warnings from administration officials in Washington that Britain shouldn't hold its breath for an early or preferential new trade agreement. Trump is only interested in agreements that can make America, not Great Britain, great again. Trump revealed his true attitude toward Britain in his Twitter response to May on Thursday when he tweeted, "Theresa May, don't focus on me, focus on the destructive radical Islamic terrorism that is taking place within the United Kingdom. We are doing just fine." He doesn't tweet strong leaders like Angela Merkel in such a fashion. "We've got more newsletters we think you'll find interesting. Click here, please try again later." There is a lesson here, of course, for Trump's supporters in Israel. Just like the British, Israelis are convinced they have a deep and special relationship, almost a mystical one, with America. They believe it is a bond that is stronger than the personality of any particular president and transient political interests. Both in Jerusalem and in London, there was concern for these ties during the presidency of Barack Obama. At the start of his term, Obama removed from the Oval Office a bust of Winston Churchill, and there were claims that due to his Kenyan grandfather's suffering under the British in the colonial period, Obama harbored a hidden antipathy to Albion. These fears were reminiscent of the claims by the Israeli right and Republicans that Obama had thrown Israel under the bus. In both countries, there was hope that with Trump's arrival at the White House, America would once again see in them their indispensable partners. In the British case, these hopes have already evaporated. The Trump administration does not seem very eager to help Britain on the day after Brexit, when it will need to rebuild its trade agreements with the world. If Theresa May still believed that Trump was willing to give Britain preferential treatment, she may have remained silent this time. U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at a press conference in October 2017, mark Israel Salem. As far as Benjamin Netanyahu is concerned, you won't hear a word of criticism of Trump. Even when the president praised the white supremacists who marched in Charlottesville chanting anti-Semitic slogans, Netanyahu remained silent. From his point of view at least, anything is better than Obama. But in the highest levels of Israel's security, intelligence and diplomatic elite, you can hear off-record grumbling that the Trump administration has no policy whatsoever in the Middle East and is giving Russia and Iran free rein to increase their influence in the region. If Trump's latest tweet scandal proves anything, it is that he will never disavow his anti-Semitic supporters, and that his words of support for Israel will not be matched by actions. Page 5. The Jerusalem neighborhood of Ein Karam, in the southwestern part of the capital, is an exceptional place. Not only is this beautiful village the only one in Israel that remains much as it was centuries ago, but it is also identified with the biblical Beit HaKarim, from which, according to the Talmud, stones were quarried for the Second Temple, as well as being a sacred site for Christians, where Jesus' mother Mary is said to have met with John the Baptist's mother, Elizabeth. Its residents live in houses that are 100, 400, or even 800 years old. Scattered among them are monasteries and churches, synagogues and a mosque. But today, all this is in danger. Various development plans threaten to strangle the neighborhood. Penina Einmore is a tour guide, an environmental activist and a former chairwoman of Ein Karam's Neighborhood Association, who has lived here for 42 years. One of the plans now threatening the beautiful neighborhood, she says during an interview in her lovely home, with its arches and high ceilings, is an old proposal to build a hotel next to the spring that lies at the heart of the neighborhood. 6 stories, 60 rooms, with no parking, and the government hydrologist wrote in his report that the hotel will block the tunnel to the spring, which is sacred to Christians as Mary's spring, she explained. Church of the Visitation in Ein Karam, Jerusalem. Mihal Fatal ancient terraces, seen from Notre Dame de Sion. Ron Havilio, that's the spring where Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Elizabeth met? Yes. It's a scene shown in every Catholic and Orthodox church in the world. And right there, on that site so important to Christianity, they want to build the hotel? The Visitation, from Altarpiece of the Virgin by Jacques Darret, 14,341,435. Still, our life is very Sisyphean. So this is the plan that most threatens you now. No, it's the most minor. The other proposals are for the construction of a large army base, a huge, noisy pumping station on the slope below the main monastery, and 1,800 apartments on the site of the former Carmel boarding school. A new light rail line is already being dug, just 50 meters from the golden onion domes of the Russian church. There are also 3 additional plans for construction in the surrounding area, including Ramat Hadassah and Mordat Ora. The site of the future army base is a hill 150 meters from the easternmost houses of the neighborhood. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman and Chief of Staff Lieutenant Gen. Gadi Eisenkot attended the September 18 cornerstone-laying ceremony. Einmore says she can't understand how a project whose roots were in a cabinet resolution aimed at strengthening the city and that was originally planned for the northeastern Jerusalem neighborhood of Mount Scopus ended up in Ein Karam instead. Penina Einmore, Mihal Fatal, this a huge base for the military colleges which will move from Glilit outside of Tel Aviv. A plan was approved to put them near the Hebrew University, which actually wants them, on Mount Scopus, or alternatively in Givat Ram, she said, referring to the university's 2 campuses. But now they want to build the college in woodland with tons of archaeological sites from the First Temple period, quarries, storage caves, wine presses, a real biblical park. That's where they'll put a base whose parking lot alone is designed for 500 cars. A figure in the Defense Ministry who asked to remain anonymous said that because the university's proposals were too inflexible and didn't suit the army, the decision on the location was passed on to the Jerusalem Development Authority, which proposed only the Ein Karam site. The ministry opposed the location for several reasons, including the hilly topography, but the development agency insisted on that site. First Temple-era terraces. Ein Mor's recent book, Ein Karam, a walking and cooking tour of the biblical village with photos by Michal Fadel, who also photographs for Haaretz, published by Lunchbox Press, in Hebrew, is a mix of wonderful stories and local recipes provided by her daughter, the chef Adelia Ein Mor. Ein Karam, she says, was recognized as worthy of preservation by both the International Council on Monuments and Sites and Israel's UNESCO office. She thinks the international headquarters of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization would extend its recognition if the city government were to commit to preserving the site. 3 justifications have been advanced for placing Ein Karam on the World Heritage List. The first is the landscape, with its ancient terraces, some of which date to the First Temple era. There are also ancient guard posts and waterworks. Together, they display the entire history of agriculture in this area, including during the Muslim and Crusader periods, nuns and Notre Dame de Sion. Michal Fadel II is the site's sanctity to Christians, along with the artworks that have been inspired by it, from Salome, both the play by Oscar Wilde and the opera by Richard Strauss, through the churches whose art depicts the meeting of Mary and Elizabeth to the Magnificats composed by Bach, Vivaldi, Verdi and others. The third leg is the unusual architecture of the houses, which combines Crusader, Byzantine and Arab elements along with European and Moorish influences. And who knows more about all these treasures than local residents? But the city refuses to listen to them. The municipality isn't willing to discuss anything with us, Ein Mor said. They see us as an antagonistic group because of our struggle to create a holistic plan for the place. The only time Mayor Nir Barkat came to Ein Karam, 2 years ago, with a deputy mayor, it was on the condition that he not meet with any residents or neighborhood association members. The situation was completely different when Ehud Olmert was mayor, she said, from 1993 to 2003. He met with us several times, and he's the one who announced a plan to turn the place into a car-free site. Hundreds of buses per day sometimes go down our narrow main street. It makes you fear for your life. Alongside them are private cars, which park anywhere they can on weekends. We love the tourists, but what conveys them here is harmful. Ein Karam, Jerusalem. Michal Fadel Miriam Spring and Ein Karam, Jerusalem. Michal Fadel Ein Mor has a detailed plan to turn the place into an ecotourism village, with a cable car that would bring visitors from Mount Herzl, modeled on similar plans in Europe. But meanwhile, instead of an ecological village, you're getting a noisy pumping station. They approved a plan for Israel's largest water facility ever, on the slope below the Notre Dame de Sion. This is Jerusalem's 5th water line, including a storage facility with a pump that makes a huge racket, and a large gas storage facility alongside it. And who's responsible for this plan? The National Infrastructure, Energy and Water Ministry and the Israel Lands Administration. It just shows, once again, how our planning vision here isn't comprehensive. And now, we need to say, stop. That's what I ask of Mayor Barkat, the Jerusalem Development Authority and the city engineer. Off in the distance, I could hear banging. That's the 5th building plan in the village. Ein Mor explained. Above the golden domes of the Russian monastery they're building an 8-meter-high concrete rail overpass. It's right on the ridge, 50 meters away, but from here, it will look as if the train is riding on the domes, walking through Ein Karam. Soon the scenery will change. Michal Fadel, it's the light rail line from the Ora Junction to Hadassah, she continued, referring to Hadassah University Hospital, Ein Karam. The idea of the light rail is welcome, but they could have done it differently here. In any case, to calm the Russian nuns, they told them, what do you want? It's 50 meters from your rooms. In other words, we've kept our distance, and they added cynically, and this is true, that passengers will have a wonderful view. Arab ghosts. During the 1948 War of Independence, some 5,000 Arab residents of Ein Karam fled within a week due to the combination of rumors of a massacre in the neighboring village of Deir Yassin and an order by Arab leaders to evacuate. In her book, Ein Mor tells several stories about encounters with relatives of those refugees who returned to visit. Is it uncomfortable to live in houses abandoned by Arabs? I was born in an Arab house in Jaffa, and my heart aches for every refugee, no matter who he is. Look, I'm already tearing up. There are no winners in wars. But today, I don't see any possibility of removing the people from Lada Ramel or the Moshavim or Jaffa and telling the Arabs, come back. I do see a need to make an agreement and give them financial compensation. One of the families that returned to visit, she recalled, thought it important to ask me how long I'd lived in their house, that is, if I came in when they fled. But that's also irrelevant, because whoever was brought in their place didn't want to live here. The border with Jordan was close by and dangerous, and most of the houses had no bathrooms or kitchens. For whom, in your view, is it easier? You are residents of Ramat Aviv, who live in what used to be Sheikh Muniz, which was razed. Adelia Einmore, Mihal Fadel and Penina Einmore. Mihal Fadel, it's not just Sheikh Muniz, it's the whole country. It's clear that we feel the physical presence more strongly, but I wouldn't define it as hard or easy. There was a situation, and fortunately, we won. The Palestinian people were badly hurt by this. We need to find a way to live with them in peace. Regarding the army base, the Jerusalem municipality said, the historic core of Ein Karam is important and will be preserved. The land designated for building the colleges isn't close to the village and doesn't undermine its preservation. It has been legally zoned for public buildings for several years now. The option chosen through an architectural contest run by the army has a modest architectural appearance, it continued. Planning has just started, and as usual, there will be a process of public involvement. We regret that extremists are misleading the residents and disseminating erroneous information due to extraneous interests. The Defense Ministry said, in planning the campus, great weight was given to preserving nature. It will be built on just 30% of the land, comply with green standards and involve low-rise construction that integrates into the landscape. Yoni Sheikh, the head of the Ein Karam Neighborhood Association, said, the hill in question is within the boundaries of UNESCO's decision and has been put on the tentative list for official recognition. Construction is liable to thwart this decision. The claim by the army and the municipality that people coming to the base will use public transportation seems ludicrous to us, he added. There will be more than 1,000 additional cars on our narrow roads during rush hour. We demand that the alternatives of Givat Ram and Mount Scopus be reconsidered. With regard to the hotel, the city said, the plan was approved in 2009, and it specifies conditions for protecting the spring. This May, a licensing file was opened for the hotel's construction. The neighborhood association said, the current plan is better than the previous one, but it still includes massive excavation, and according to an opinion by hydrologist Gabi Shalif, there's still a serious concern of impeding the flow from the spring to the point of stopping it. We issued a letter opposing the plan this month. Regarding construction in the old Karmat compound, the city said, in the new master plan, this compound is earmarked for municipal development, for expansion of the Kiryat Ha'avot neighborhood. The developers and the landowners want a comprehensive, urban renewal plan for 5 high-rises on Olvanger Street. The plan hasn't yet been submitted. The municipality supports the plan. The neighborhood association said, we're talking about 18 apartments in towers of up to 28 stories high. We're working on an alternative plan with the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, one that would leave Karmat's grounds as a hotel complex on green land. This plan, on land purchases by Shlomo Deri and other buyers, which has been advanced in various constellations, will create a severe transportation problem and harm the landscape of the Ein Karam Basin. Regarding the waterworks, the city said the plan was approved by the National Planning and Building Council. The neighborhood association said that after losing a case against the facility in the High Court of Justice, it began working with the Mikoret Water Company, which agreed to make the changes we requested, and with the municipality, where we found an attentive ear in city architect Ofer Manor to reduce the damage to the landscape, and especially the acoustic damage, this facility will create. Regarding the light rail, the city said, the plan to continue the railway line to Hadassah Ein Karam was approved after legal proceedings due to the church's opposition. A minor widening of the existing road to include the track is preferable to creating a new road that would harm the landscape. The light rail is a very environmentally friendly means of transportation, which usually runs 3 to 4 meters from houses and institutions. Here, it will run 50 meters from the Russian monastery. Regarding the refusal to meet with the neighborhood association, the city said, the mayor holds regular meetings with the Yovelim Community Administration, which represents the residents. The administration in question covers several neighborhoods of southwestern Jerusalem.